Dr. Sima Samar, welcome to NexusTalk.
Thank you. Thank you. It's my pleasure to see you.
Thank you. I'm so honored to be sitting with you today. Growing up, I would, be told stories about you, of your bravery, of your honesty, and your down-to-earth leadership. And I'm so excited to talk about everything that I've read from your book, Outspoken, co-written with Sally Armstrong, that is a national bestseller already. I read your book last week, and as an Afghan, it was both a page-turner and it was really emotional. You covered the 50-year history of Afghanistan, showing it through your eyes as a young girl in Jaghori, Ghazni, a student in Helmand in Kabul, and as a doctor in Quetta, Kabul, and Jaghori. You're one of the most beloved faces of our country, and rightfully so. You have always stood up for women's rights, even if that meant, making some personal sacrifices. You've been nominated for the Nobel Peace Prize, received the Right Livelihood Award in 2012, and been awarded honorary degrees from Brown University, Carleton University, and Salem University. In Afghanistan, you served as chairperson of the Afghanistan Independent Human Rights Commission, Minister of Women's Affairs, Deputy Chair of the Interim Administration of Afghanistan, and United Nations Special Rapporteur on the situation of human rights in Sudan. Thank you for waiting through that long intro. I'm going to ask my first question. So about your book, you start the book by stating, I have 3 strikes against me. I'm a woman, I speak for women, and I'm Hazara, the most persecuted ethnic group in Afghanistan. Now, most people would look at those 3 things and see them as weaknesses, but you've turned them into, points of strength. How do you think that sense of your identity has helped you become Sima Samar?
Well, thank you very much for giving me this opportunity, and I'm so proud that you and your girls and boys in your age are coming up and standing for human rights and for equality, for justice, and for the values that make our humanity. Yes, the 3 strike that I had as a woman, the culture in Afghanistan, the patriarchal culture. Women, when they raise their voice, they are not seen as a good woman. Good woman is the one who bear the problem, who doesn't raise their voice, who do not stand for their rights. So that was one of the problems. The second problem is that, of course, my ethnicity, as you know, that we always have been, there was a lot of discrimination against us, always discriminated by different government or ethnic groups in the country. And thirdly, because I was outspoken. And for in Afghan culture, they say that, a good woman should not raise their voice should not be heard. But I believe that good woman has to have a voice and stand for the injustice, either in the family or outside of the family. So I think I used that in order to show that we as a woman, or I as a woman, I can stand and show that I'm capable of doing some good work. Unfortunately, the system is such that usually they say, we don't count you women, and I'm saying, excuse me, I'm a woman. Mm-hmm. You have to accept me as capable woman and human being.
Yeah. And also, one thing that I noticed about you, which makes you, so beloved among our people all throughout Afghanistan, is that you were a politician, but you didn't act like, the stereotypes that were known about politicians in Afghanistan. And I know that you don't like to be called a politician, but I want to acknowledge that you were a successful, communicator. You talk about a story in your book where, a man once said to you, if I give women human rights, I have to give away my human rights, mm-hmm. which is, a basic, one of the most traditional mindsets in Afghanistan. But you say that you eventually got through to him. And I know he's not the only person you've gotten through to. What do you think is the key for your success in communicating with people who mostly have skeptical mindsets?
I think one of the things that we have to listen to the people and be more respectful while you're speaking to them. Because when they simply say that if I give the right to women, then I will lose my rights, we have to explain you will not lose your rights. In fact, you will not lose your power also.
Yeah.
You become more powerful and more successful within your family life or within the community, within the society. And that requires a lot of patience to listen and to communicate with them and to make them understanding that it's not the case. So that is, I think that is a capability more in women rather than the men, because women are more kind, have more patience. We see our mothers at home. So that teaches a lot to communicate with the people, to make them understand that we are not enemy, and you should not count us as your enemy. Rather, you should count us as your partner.
So what I'm hearing is patience, active listening, and giving the sense that we're in this together.
Exactly. Respect.
Yes, and respect, of course. Dr. Seb, you write about the days when the Taliban first came in Afghanistan. They emerged from there. Some people say after the Taliban came in 2021 that they are now different. What do you have to say to those people?
Well, I think the Taliban promised during the Doha talks, which took 2 years, more than 2 years, they were saying that they're different, they learn from their mistakes, they will not repeat what they did during the first government, during their first government towards the end of 1990s. But the problem is that in terms of women's rights, they never said that what they would do. They would saying that we will give the rights to women according to Sharia law. So Sharia law interpretation for me is different and for them is different. For me, the most important thing is the human dignity. Whatever action takes or violate the human dignity, that is, for me, is not acceptable. But in few things, they are different. First of all, they are more capable, because they took Afghanistan as a different Afghanistan than 1994 and 96 when they took Kabul. It is, the institution were there, the structure, the system was there. So they came and took the whole thing, the whole country in a better shape. Like, for example, in 1990s, we had only one television, which was national television, and they locked it. That was already destroyed. So there was one radio, they called it Radio Shariat. Now it's a lot of radios, a lot of TV channels, private, although some of them are closed, but still there are more than one. And they were not allowing video or camera, but now they are using the social media and the cameras for their own propaganda. So they become more capable and more used to the technology.
So you're saying the way they present themselves to the world to kind of hide the atrocities that they're doing and promote maybe the false narrative and feed that into the Western?
I think the atrocities that they do are same, but a little bit different. For example, in 1990s, they were not allowing any radio music, but they are listening to music themselves now.
Okay.
And although they break the music instrument and beat up the musicians and the singers or arrest them, but it is not as serious as it was during 1990s. But in terms of women's education, access to education, access to healthcare, their freedom of movement, and to work, access to work and job possibility, it's same. It's same ideas, same opinion.
Yes.
And they are actually skilled on the social media in communication with the people.
I've also noticed, since we're talking about the media and how the Taliban are portrayed in the media, I've also noticed a lot of Western vloggers who travel to Afghanistan and kind of say, oh, Afghanistan is safe. You can travel here as a tourist, which I think maybe is related to how the Taliban want, the world to see them as not so, violent. But I think that is true. What do you think about that?
Yeah, because I think they were the cause of the violence. Violence everywhere. They were causing suicide attacks. They were attacking. They were the reason for insecurity in Afghanistan. Now they're not doing it against themselves, against their government. But particularly for the foreigners, they really facilitate their trips and their visits. Khalid's wife said it's a haven. When she went, of course, she was maybe treated like a princess in Afghanistan because her husband helped a lot. The Taliban took 2 weeks to take the power.
Yeah. And also, speaking of the Taliban, from what I understand, being a Talib is a mindset, a closed-minded, uneducated, and stubborn mindset. Do you think that if they had been educated, a group like the Taliban would not exist today?
The Taliban was actually taken to those madrasas, mainly in Pakistan, when they were young, very young child, or from the camps, because the families were not able to feed them properly, so they promised that they will educate them, they will feed them, they will give them clothes and everything. So they were brainwashed over there. If they were educated more in a modern education with science subject and everything, normal education, let's say formal education, I would have not think that they would have been this extreme right kind of dictators.
And I was just having this conversation earlier today, and we were thinking about, or looking at how we know that girls are not going to school right now in Afghanistan, but boys are. But we don't know what the curriculum currently is. What do you think about the education system right now?
I think they changed the curriculum a lot because they took out all the civilian studies. So from the subject, like they changed a lot of the subjects. They include a lot of religious subjects, the way they want the children to learn their religion. So it is really sad because they actually take the knowledge from the future generation of the country. The girls are not able to go to school, but the boys are going, and from their walking on the street, you can understand that it's a different ways of behavior and the different ways of teaching. So it is really sad for the future of the country. Of course, we are going backward because 50% of the population is not allowed to get education. Okay, there are some schools and some online teaching and so on, but it is not accessible to every girl child who need to go and who must to go to get to school and get education. But for the boys, as they said, that they established already 21,000 madrasas all over the country.
Wow.
For boys and girls. So they teach the boys to be jihadists and more radical, for the girls to be more obedient wife and mothers. And that is not going to help the development in the country and civilized, democratic Afghanistan, where everybody could live with dignity.
Dr. Saib, you married Abdulghafur Sultani in April of 1975, and you had a conversation that you wrote about in the book where you said to him, I cannot be an obedient wife, but I could be a good friend. And reading about your relationship with him, it was really admirable the way he supported you. How do you think a supportive Ghafur helped you establish your identity and achieve your dream of becoming a doctor?
I think he really helped me by facilitating my education, because I was not allowed to go to Kabul to study
On your
because
own.
the dormitory for the girls were not known on that time.
Okay.
It was a year before us that they rented a house, and there were very few girls, maybe 30, 40 girls from Kandahar and some other big cities, Mazar and Kunduz, in that dorm. But it was not known. So for my father to let her daughter to go to Kabul on her own was a big issue. So when Ghafoor proposed it, and his family came as usual, the father came to ask my father, then I said, I cannot be an obedient wife, but I can be a friend and I want to study. And he promised that he will do everything to let me go to continue my studies. And he really was helpful.
Yeah.
He never acted as an Afghan husband to say what to wear.
Typical, traditional. Yeah.
Yes, what to wear, where to go, where
Yeah.
not to go. I mean, he was really helping me because I went a month later to the university. University was started on 21st of March, and I went in April. Then he was helping me even to take my notes. Afghanistan was poor. We had to take note every subject. It was really difficult. The curriculum in the book was not available that we should have. We were writing every subject in our notebooks. Otherwise I think I would have not been able to study. And he was taking part on household jobs, half. We were 50% each one of us. Mm-hmm. Although he was also busy because he was teaching physics in the science faculty, and then he was working on his book to get promoted to the different level of the profession that they had. But we had an understanding.
And speaking of supportive Afghan men and Afghan families, what do you have to say to those families who, are now displaced, are living in diaspora outside of Afghanistan, and, the men still don't allow their women to go to work, to participate in daily life, although they have the sense of agency?
Yeah, I think it's sad for a few reasons. One, I think when they try to discriminate against women, they start, in my personal view, they start conflict within the family. Because they feel that they are superior, the other people has to follow them and be inferior to them. And that's the question of power within the family. Mm-hmm. So within the family, we don't need to say who's the powerful person within the family. So it should be an equal rights for everyone in the family. And they should allow their wives and daughters to if they get education and then to go to work. Because we cannot build a country with half of the population. Mm-hmm. I keep saying that if he really wants to fly, we need two wings.
Yeah.
We cannot fly with one wings. Mm-hmm. So, in the current political and social situation in Afghanistan, we feel that.
Of course.
That's why we are so backward than other countries. What is wrong? And that is, I think, one of the reasons is the lack of education and lack of understanding of equal rights and human dignity.
Yeah, of course, because women's rights is, equally impacting the economy, sustainability, and overall the state of a country.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah. Talking about, your role in the government, once the Islamic Republic of Afghanistan was established and international support came in, you started working in government alongside other politicians whose reputations were maybe not the best. You describe instances where discrimination, lack of accountability, and fraud, came in the way of honest service. What would you say to people who mistake leadership for ego or self-interest?
I think one of the reasons that we failed after 20 years on building democratic country was this kind of ego or this kind of thinking that they are superior. I'm really against that. Whatever, we fought against the Russian, yes, but that doesn't mean that we are superior, we are holy, nobody could touch. And that was one of the problems, I think, in Afghanistan, because instead of giving the job to a qualified person, we gave the job to the one who had more power, more militias, more gunmen with them, and without any accountability. For me, acknowledgement of the suffering of the people is the base for building a better society, and a society with equal rights and democratic society. What is lacking in Afghanistan, none of us acknowledging that we made a mistake.
Yeah.
Everybody claimed that they are holy because they fought against Russia. Yes, they fought against Russia, but we fought among ourselves a lot. And we discriminate against some of the ethnic group. We discriminate against female population of the country. And that is the cause of the failure of democracy. Democracy means equal rights for everyone. And we did a lot of work on human rights, and people are known, now they use at least human rights. But the problem is that the people use this word, but they don't apply it to themselves. What I suggest or advise to your generation is that to read human rights values and start to apply and make your daily behavior.
So start it from building yourself, so that one
Exactly.
day when you're in, a space of service, you don't make personal choices.
Like some people speaking of human rights, and then they have 3 wives.
Yeah, no, that is true. That is something that we have heard of. Another thing that I, recognized or saw from reading your book was that for so long, before the Taliban, after the Taliban, you were the point of communication with people because you were a doctor and you were, helping people, and also with the international community. From your experience, what does a true partnership between the international community and a country like Afghanistan look like?
I think the true partnership is similar to communicate with some people. To listen and to understand the people and respect their opinion. If it's against you and it's oppose you, you should not really take revenge. You should try to change the mentality of that person. And the behavior of the international community with the Afghans, I think I see both ways had the problems. The international community was thinking that they know everything about Afghanistan, so they want to do and really build a democratic Afghanistan. We as an Afghan, we were thinking that we are brave people. We fought with Russia. We kicked out USSR from Afghanistan. So we know, we understand our people. The problem was that we never sat and properly communicated with each other that this is the reality. Let's acknowledge our weaknesses and let's build the country with truly honest partnership. This is true in the family. This is true in the daily life with anyone. And that was not the case. I was really, every time I was saying in my interviews and my public talks, that we need projects based on the need of the people. Not a pre-cooked or pre-prepared program for Afghanistan.
So the basis of success in that relationship is communication.
Communication and a really inclusive idea of decision making.
Yeah. Also, on the point of, international community and what they can do, you write something that, I found really interesting about the first period of the Taliban when they came. The response of the international agencies was that in the 1990s, they justified the abuses of the Taliban by saying that at least there's peace. What do you want the international community to understand now, given similar reactions to the Taliban today?
Well, they only, unfortunately, they see peace as a silence of gun. And that is not peace. Peace is human security. Peace when a woman can live with dignity. One of the indicators of the peace and development, actually, the level of women's participation on decision making everywhere, not only in Afghanistan. So I think we are mistaking when we say it's peace. That is, I think that if we define peace in that way, the graveyard is the most peaceful place in this planet. Nobody protests, nobody stand up, nobody shout, nobody raise their voice.
Yeah.
So we don't want the peace of graveyard. We want the peace of people living with dignity, without fear, without wants. What is peace when people have food for their children in the morning and not for the dinner? Mm-hmm. This is not peace.
And what do you think the international community can do right now to help with the situation of women in Afghanistan?
I think the problem in Afghanistan, in my personal view, should be solved by the people in Afghanistan.
Okay.
Number one, we have to take the leadership and build our country. And the international community also should not look at the issues of human rights as a luxury, as a values for themselves, not for the others. Human rights, values and principle is universal. The people of Afghanistan is also human and they should have rights. So they can pressure the Taliban and do not really use the excuse of this is Afghan culture or tradition and they always been like this. That is not true. And that should not be used. It's not our culture and it's not our religion. But I keep saying that during the pilgrimage, when the people goes to Mecca, mm-hmm. every Muslim man and woman walking together without really distinguishing who's Afghan, who's not, who's Pakistani, who's Arab, mm-hmm. for example, they walk together with open face. Is Afghanistan more holy than Mecca for Muslims? That we have to cover our face in Afghanistan?
That is a really great point. Yeah. And also, you know, when it comes to how we can support as people who are in diaspora, I was wondering that, like you write about this, when the Taliban came during their first regime, you attended international meetings to raise awareness, encouraged other influential women to start movements and sign petitions and pressure the regime. You wrote 12,000 letters from Canadians about Afghan women's human rights were taken to the UN General Assembly. You write of other movements as well. Do you think those movements had an impact? And do you encourage Afghans now to do the same thing?
Yes, it was really important because in 1990s, when the USSR collapsed and the Mujahideen took over, they thought that Afghanistan is done. So when the Taliban came, because of the fighting between different Mujahideen groups, the Taliban came and they said that they will disarm all the groups and bring peace, this kind of peace that they have today.
Yeah.
So everybody was withdrawn because they had other priorities rather than Afghanistan. And that proved to be wrong because Afghanistan was isolated and Afghanistan became the biggest producer of opium. Afghanistan became a training camp for the extremist and violent groups and so on. Afghanistan became the biggest prison for women also. Yeah. So this time it's same. When the story was written by Sally Armstrong and homemakers,
yeah.
A small magazine which was mainly about home and cooking and beauty products and so on, then it was raising a lot of awareness within the Canadian community. So women in Canada start to write to their government. And the foreign minister on that time took the letters of 12,000 letters of Canadian women to General Assembly in September. On that time, Kofi Annan was the Secretary General of the United Nations, and gave to Kofi Annan and said, this is what's going on. That was the first time that they condemned the Taliban approach.
And how long was that after the Taliban came?
It was 1998. Taliban took Kabul in 1996. This time again, we can do that, of course. But I think current situation is really difficult situation because we have really, really bad conflicts everywhere. In 1990s, it was not like this. Like Ukraine was not there. Gaza was not too bad. I mean, there were conflict, but it's not as serious as Gaza. Sudan was not as bad as it is today. Myanmar was not this bad. A lot of other countries which there's a conflict. It was easier to draw that attention. And there was some political will within the Europeans and Western countries. Now I think they are kind of, after 20 years in Afghanistan, spending money in blood, they are trying not to mention because it's their failure. So in my opinion, Afghanistan case is a failure of Afghan people, Afghan government mainly, unfortunately, because they were not able to manage the situation, and the international community, including UN agencies.
Dr. Seb, you've also said that you want to write another book, but this time in Farsi, a more detailed version of, Outspoken or your whole life story. When should we expect that book to come out?
Hopefully end of this year.
Yeah.
Yes, I finished writing. I contracted with the editor.
That's great.
Even today I had to go through with him writing some part of it. So hopefully it will be, it's much longer, most probably it will be around 1,000 pages or something.
Wow.
Because it's so difficult, as you can understand that it's so difficult to explain everything in English.
Yes.
That the issues, the culture, the behavior of people in Afghanistan. So I just wanted to write in Persian, actually, for the young girls in Afghanistan that Sima Samar is not somebody who was Sima Samar, or the one who at least become famous in the country.
Yeah.
Is not somebody who was not from the grassroots or not gone through a lot of difficulties during the last almost 50 years of war and conflict.
Yeah, and I'm really excited to read that book as well because, when I was reading this book, it was so difficult to read it because emotionally there's a lot that you talk about, heavy topics that you cover that are, difficult to read about, but essential that we know that was part of the history. And I think this book is also, you're telling us about a piece of history, and I think that's really important. But also, I couldn't help but think throughout reading this book that you've gone through so much that I can't even imagine. And I'm sure a lot of people think the same way. But you still, rise as a symbol of hope for all of us. How do you do it? How one becomes Sima Samar?
Well, I think one thing that early in my life, I realized that there's a difference between girls and boys, and there's a difference because of my ethnicity, because of my religion, and so on. I wanted to prove that I am capable to do all the same work. In the society you feel this, in the school you feel, in the university you feel. the differences. So wanted to prove, and somehow the life changed, or I faced a lot of problems when I was a student when my husband was taken, and it was a really difficult time. Then tried to struggle against the USSR invasion in Afghanistan the way that I could. I mean, I never had Kalashnikov to go fight with someone, but we were distributing night letters against the USSR invasion in Afghanistan and against the atrocities of Khalqis and Parchamis in Afghanistan, and writing some slogan on the wall with the spray color, Mark Bashurevi, something. And then I wanted to be my own, because I was married and I was 23 when my husband was taken, so I was not very mature person.
That is a young age, yeah.
Then when I graduated from university, I started working in the hospital, and then decided to go to Jaghori, which was free, which was not under control of the government, to help the struggle against the USSR, to help the people who fighting against the USSR. So that way I continued. And now when I think it was really not easy.
Yeah.
Some people who saw me when I was so young, and I was doctor and that time in Jaghori, walking everywhere and riding donkey or horse or by car, walking by feet. It was a strange, a person who lives in Connecticut. He said, recently actually, he said, I brought my mother-in-law to me, she was sick. And he said, I was surprised when I saw you. Because young, careless,
Yeah, as a doctor.
Person, yes. And I said, well, in Australia, for example, somebody was telling me that he said his uncle's wife was in labor for 3 days, and he was young when he came back from the school. Children were going to the mosque, to the mullah, to study something.
Yeah.
He said there was kind of few people around our house, and he said that we thought that my uncle's wife died. He said when I entered to the yard of the house, I came down from the second floor, and he said I was surprised to see a young woman with a small scarf and so on. He was mentioning this time, and I remembered exactly that day because she delivered the baby, and I helped her actually. No, that was not maybe magic, but yeah, it was interesting experience.
It seemed like magic to people who weren't really used to seeing, as you said, a young girl with a small scarf as a doctor. And
yes.
I think, that's how you broke stereotypes.
They have not seen female doctors.
Yeah.
And then from their own people. So most of them were thinking that I'm one of the MSF doctor, because my style was different. I was wearing a male dress. With some embroidery to show my feminine desire.
Yeah.
With a small scarf.
And, you've written this book, which is already a gift for the young generation, but so much hasn't been covered. We can only know so much about your experience in Afghanistan. But for young people, my generation, what words of advice do you have?
Well, I think to the girls who are outside of Afghanistan, I think they have to use the opportunity and the facilities to build their capacity and their knowledge. I think knowledge is a capital that they give self-confidence and ability to be yourself and to be able to help the other people also, not for yourself, but people who are in need. For the girls in Afghanistan, I think they also has to use every possible way, every single crack to build their knowledge. I think luckily this time we have telephone in Afghanistan. There's WhatsApp, there's a Facebook, there's Instagram, there's Twitter. They can learn a lot from those. And I think they have to change to make every household as a school. They have to pressure their brothers and fathers, whatever they learn outside or in the school, they have to teach their sisters at home. So this way we can actually resist against the ignorance, against the violence that imposed on women in Afghanistan, and to be on our own feet. I know it's not easy, I know it's difficult, but it is not impossible.
And on that note, where do you find hope when you think about the future?
On you, in your generation.
That is really kind of you. Thank you so much.
Thank
you, Dr. Samar, for your time to talk to me, for everything that you have done for our people, for everything that you continue to do. This book is one example to our audience. Grab your copy of Outspoken by Fight for Freedom and Human Rights in Afghanistan. This book is not just a memoir, it's a piece of history written truthfully from inside of Afghanistan from 1979 to 2021. All the knowledge in this book is a gift that Dr. Samar has given us, so don't miss out. Until next episode of Nexus Talk, stay informed, stay inspired.